Let me try to recall that strange morning. That day the world tilted on its axis for me. It was at the end of the Hypnotist show, the lights coming up, a sea of faces blurring before me. Then, something shifted. It was like waking up from a dream within a dream, a deeper level of awareness dawning. And that's when I saw them. Scattered throughout the audience, amongst the familiar human faces, were others, faces not quite right. The Fascinators. They'd been there all along, I realized with a jolt, but I had been asleep like everyone else. Now, I was awake, truly awake, and the truth hit me with the force of a physical blow. I understood everything in that instant. They were in control, and if I showed any sign of my awakening, they would simply command me back to sleep, and I would obey. I left the theater, pushing out into the bright, garish lights of the night. It was a careful dance, a deliberate effort to not betray the horror I now carried within me. I had to avoid any flicker in my eyes that might reveal I saw the green, reptilian flesh, the multiple yellow eyes that belonged to the real rulers of our world. One of them, disguised as an ordinary man, even asked me for a light. I gave it to him, my hand steady, my face blank, and then I moved on. A solitary figure, suddenly adrift in an alien landscape, hidden in plain sight. Walking down the street, I saw the posters, the ones we usually just glanced at, now screaming their true message. Photographs of those many eyes stared out, and beneath them the commands were clear. Work 8 hours, play 8 hours, sleep 8 hours, marry and reproduce. A television in a store window flickered, its images momentarily drawing my gaze, but I forced myself to look away, just in time to resist the unseen pull. The command to stay tuned to this station. I lived alone in a small, quiet room. The first thing I did when I got home was to yank the television cord from the wall, severing that invisible connection to their control. But even in my silence, I could hear the faint murmur of my neighbors' TVs through the thin walls. Most of the voices were human, familiar, but now and then a chilling sound would cut through, the arrogant, strangely bird-like croaks of the aliens. "Obey the government," one croaked. "We are the government," another replied. "We are your friends. You'd do anything for a friend, wouldn't you?" And then the stark, chilling command, "Obey, work." Suddenly, the phone rang, its shrill tone a jarring intrusion into my thoughts. I picked it up. The voice on the other end was one of them, a fascinator. "Hello," it squawked, the sound grating and unnatural. "This is your control, Chief of Police Robinson. You are an old man, George Nada. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, your heart will stop. Please repeat." A cold dread settled in my chest as I repeated the words, my own voice feeling distant and mechanical. "I am an old man. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, my heart will stop." The line went dead, leaving a heavy silence in its wake. "No, it won't," I whispered, a spark of defiance flickering within the fear. Why did they want me dead? Did they know I had awakened? Perhaps someone had seen me, noticed a flicker of awareness in my eyes, a moment of non-compliance. I knew that if I was still alive at 1 minute past 8 the next morning, they would be certain. No use waiting here for the end, I thought, a grim resolve hardening within me. I went out again into the night, the neon signs casting long, distorted shadows. The posters, the flickering televisions, the occasional commands hissed by passing aliens no longer held the same power over me, yet the ingrained habit of obedience, the pull to see the world as they wanted me to see it, was still a strong undercurrent. I passed a dark alley and stopped. One of the aliens stood alone there, leaning against the wall, its form barely concealed in the gloom. I walked up to it. "Move on." The creature grunted, its multiple eyes, now clearly visible to me, focusing on me with a predatory intensity. For a moment, my grasp on this fragile new reality wavered. The reptilian head seemed to shimmer, replaced by the familiar, harmless face of an old drunk, a face I might have once offered a spare coin to. Of course, the drunk would be lovable. That was their way, their insidious method of control. But now, the illusion shattered. With a sudden, cold clarity, I picked up a discarded brick lying nearby and brought it down with all my strength onto the creature's head. For a fleeting instant, the image blurred again, the old drunk flickering back into view. But then, the sickening sight of blue-green blood oozed from the wound, and the lizard fell, twitching, its alien form now undeniable in the dim light. After a moment, it was still. I dragged the body deeper into the shadows and quickly searched it. In its pocket, I found a tiny radio, emitting strange, incomprehensible sounds, and in another pocket, a set of oddly shaped knife and fork. The radio I left there, a useless alien trinket, but the eating utensils felt strangely significant, a bizarre memento of my awakening. I can't possibly escape all of them, I thought, a wave of despair threatening to engulf me. Why even try to fight? But then, a tiny spark of hope flickered in the darkness. Maybe, just maybe, I could awaken others. It felt like a desperate gamble, a fool's errand. But it was the only path through the garishly lit streets, 12 long blocks to Lyle's apartment. I knocked on her door, and after a short wait, she appeared in her bathrobe, her face still soft with sleep. "I want you to wake up," I said, my voice urgent, pleading. "I'm awake," she replied, a hint of confusion in her eyes. "Come on in." I stepped inside. The television was playing softly in the corner, its flickering images casting dancing shadows on the walls. I reached out and turned it off, the sudden silence amplifying the tension in the room. "No," I said, my voice strained with desperation. "I mean really wake up." She looked at me, her eyes blank, uncomprehending. In a moment of raw frustration, I snapped my fingers in front of her face and shouted, "Wake up! The Master's command that you wake up." "Are you off your rocker, George?" she asked, her suspicion growing, her eyes narrowing. "You sure are acting funny." I reached out and slapped her face, a sharp, shocking sound echoing in the small apartment. "Cut that out," she cried, her hand flying to her stinging cheek. "What the hell are you up to anyway?" "Nothing," I said, the weight of my failed attempt crushing my spirit. I was just kidding around. Slapping my face wasn't just kidding around. She retorted, her anger rising, her voice sharp with hurt. Just then, a knock echoed at the door. I opened it to find one of them standing there, its reptilian form barely concealed beneath the familiar guise of a middle-aged man in shirt sleeves. "Can't you keep the noise down to a dull roar?" it said, its voice a low, menacing growl. For a fleeting moment, the alien visage flickered, and I saw the image of a man I might have passed on the street without a second glance. But the illusion was fragile, a thin veil over the monstrous reality. It was still a man when I slashed its throat with the alien eating knife, a swift, brutal act born of a desperate urgency. But it was undeniably an alien before it hit the floor with a sickening thud. I dragged the body inside and kicked the door shut. "What do you see there?" I asked Lil, pointing to the many-eyed, snake-like thing sprawled on the floor, its blue-green blood slowly pooling beneath it. Mr. Coney," she whispered, her eyes wide with terror, her face ashen. "You just killed him like it was nothing at all. Don't scream," I warned, advancing on her, the alien knife still clutched in my hand. "I won't, George. I swear I won't. Only please, for the love of God, put down that knife." She backed away, her eyes fixed on the blade, until her shoulder blades pressed against the cold, unforgiving wall. I looked at her, her terror, a mirror of the world's blindness, and a deep sense of despair washed over me. I saw that it was no use. "I'm going to tie you up," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. "First, tell me which room Mr. Coney lived in." "The first door on your left as you go toward the stairs," she said quickly, her voice trembling, tears welling in her eyes. "Georgie, Georgie, don't torture me. If you're going to kill me, do it clean. Please, Georgie, please." I teed her up with bed sheets, her muffled cries, a heartbreaking sound in the small room, and gagged her, my heart heavy with the weight of my actions. Then I searched the body of the Fascinator, finding another one of the tiny radios emitting its alien chattering, another set of the strangely shaped eating utensils, and nothing else. No answers to the questions that burned within me. I went next door, a cold determination fueling my steps. When I knocked, a voice slithered from behind the door, one of the snake things answering. "Who is it?" "Friend of Mr. Coney. I want to see him," I replied, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "He went out for a second, but he'll be right back." The door opened just a crack, and 4 yellow eyes peered out at me, their gaze cold and assessing. "You want to come in and wait?" "Okay," I said, carefully avoiding direct eye contact, a sense of dread creeping into my heart. "You alone here?" I asked as the door closed. The alien's back to me. "Yeah, why?" In a swift, silent motion, I slit its throat from behind, the alien collapsing without a sound, its lifeblood staining the carpet. I searched the apartment, a growing horror gripping my soul. I found human bones and skulls, a half-eaten hand, the gruesome reality of their existence laid bare in this ordinary apartment. I found tanks filled with huge, fat slugs floating in some viscous fluid, their forms grotesque and unsettling. The children, I thought, a wave of revulsion and a cold resolve washing over me, and I ended their silent, captive existence with a swift, decisive act. There were guns, too, of a sleek, alien design I had never seen before. I discharged one by accident, a silent release of a small, poisoned dart. I pocketed the gun and as many boxes of darts as I could carry, a desperate measure in this unfolding nightmare, then went back to Lil's apartment. When she saw me, her eyes widened in helpless terror, her body writhing against the restraints. "Relax, honey," I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, opening her purse. "I just want to borrow your car keys." I took the keys and went downstairs to the street, the weight of my knowledge a heavy burden. Her car was still parked in the familiar spot, a dent in the right fender, a stark reminder of our ordinary lives. I got in, started the engine, and began driving aimlessly through the pre-dawn streets, my mind racing, desperately searching for some way out of this terrifying reality. I turned on the car radio, hoping for some music, a brief escape, but there was nothing but news, and it was all about me, George Nada, the homicidal maniac. The announcer's voice was one of the masters, yet I detected a subtle tremor of fear beneath the arrogant tone. Why should he be scared? What could one man do against all of them? I wasn't surprised when I saw the roadblock ahead, a cluster of flashing lights cutting through the darkness. I turned off onto a side street before I reached it. "No little trip to the country for you, Georgie boy," I thought grimly, a wry smile touching my lips. They had likely discovered what I had done back at Lil's apartment, so they would probably be looking for her car. I parked it in a dark alley, a temporary sanctuary, and took the subway. For some reason, there were no aliens on the subway, not at this late hour. Perhaps they considered themselves above such mundane transport, or maybe it was just the lateness of the night that kept them hidden. When one finally did get on, its multiple eyes scanning the carriage with cold indifference, I got off at the next stop, a feeling of being constantly watched. settling upon me. I went up to the street and walked into a dimly lit bar, the kind that never truly closes, a haven for the lost and the sleepless. One of the Fascinators flickered on the television screen above the bar, its image distorted and unsettling, repeating over and over again in a strangely panicked tone, "We are your friends. We are your friends. We are your friends." The stupid lizard sounded scared. Why? What could one man do against all of one them? I ordered a beer, the amber liquid, a small comfort in this bizarre, unfolding nightmare. Then, it struck me with a sudden, profound clarity. The fascinator on the TV no longer seemed to hold any power over me. I looked at it again, its repetitive message now sounding hollow and desperate, and I understood. It has to believe it can master me to do it. The slightest hint of fear on its part, and the power to hypnotize is lost. Just then, George's picture flashed on the screen, a grainy, unflattering image accompanied by dire warnings. I retreated to the dimly lit phone booth in the corner, a desperate plan forming in my mind. I dialed my control, the chief of police. "Hello, Robinson?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the chaos within. "Speaking." The alien squawked, its voice betraying a clear note of agitation. "This is George Nada. I figured out how to wake people up." "What? George? Hang on. Where are you?" Robinson sounded almost hysterical, his carefully constructed composure finally crumbling. I hung up the phone, paid for my beer, and left the bar, melting back into the anonymity of the city streets. I knew they would likely trace my call, but at this point, it no longer mattered. I caught another subway, heading downtown, a grim sense of purpose now guiding my every step. It was dawn, the first pale light of morning creeping over the horizon, when I entered the imposing building housing the city's largest television studios, the very heart of their unseen control. I consulted the building directory, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and a desperate hope, and then took the elevator to the upper floors. The cop standing guard in front of the main studio recognized me instantly. "Why, you're Nada!" he gasped, his multiple eyes widening in alarm. I didn't want to use the poison dart gun, but I knew I had to. I had to slip past the guards, the engineers, all the silent sentinels of their pervasive control. I had to reach the source of their deception. I moved swiftly, silently, the alien dart gun, my only weapon in this desperate, final act. I had to neutralize several more before I finally reached the studio itself, the air buzzing with a strange, unseen energy. Outside, the sounds of police sirens wailed, excited shouts echoed through the corridors, and the frantic rhythm of running footsteps grew louder on the stairs. The alien, still disguised as a human, sat calmly before the large television camera, its image being broadcast across the still sleeping city, repeating the insidious mantra, "We are your friends. We are your friends." It didn't see me enter, a shadow moving silently in the periphery. With a steady hand, I raised the dart gun and fired. The alien on the screen simply stopped, mid-sentence, its eyes losing focus, its body slumping forward, dead. I stepped into the frame, standing near the fallen alien, and spoke, my voice echoing with a newfound resolve, imitating the alien's guttural croak. "Wake up! Wake up! See us as we are, and kill us." But it was my voice, George Nada's voice, raw and urgent, that the city heard that morning superimposed over the dead Fascinator's image. And for the very first time the city awoke. The veil was lifted, the illusion shattered, and the war began. I did not live to see the victory that finally came, the dawn of a world free from their unseen control. My heart, pushed beyond its limits by the sudden awakening and the desperate struggle, gave out at exactly 8 o'clock in the morning. A quiet end to a day that began with such a profound and terrifying revelation. The end. Well, friends, thanks for staying with me until the end of that strange and unsettling morning. As this is the very first fire we've lit here on the channel, I'd be immensely grateful if you could share your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of how the story was told, and especially what you thought of the voice that carried it. Your feedback will be like kindling to our fire, helping us shape the tales to come. If you enjoyed this journey into the Emberverse, please do give us a like and subscribe. Your support will be the embers that keep this channel burning bright. Until our next gathering, stay safe,